Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Web of Sustainability Part 2. We are so excited to have you. My name is Scarlett Odell, and I'm an education specialist at Foundations Inc. Welcome to our Beyond the Conference webinar series. Today, I'm joined with my colleague Chas Sumners, also from Foundations Inc., and we are going to get started shortly. But before we do, I want to give you a little bit of background information on Foundations. So, we are a national nonprofit organization located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and our mission is to improve the quality of education by building the skills of educators. We work across school day with after school programs, schools, districts, and states to create a brighter future for every child every day. If you're interested in learning more about Foundations, you can follow us on social media, and we will drop that information in the chat for you as well. And you may already know us from our signature professional learning experience, the Beyond School Hours Conference, that's held each winter in 2026, this upcoming year. We're actually holding our conference in Orlando, Florida from March 1st through the 4th, and we would love to have you all be our guests, and we will share more information with about that at the end of today's session. Now, I would like to, I'm going to pass it over to Chaz, and just so you know that our webinar today will be archived on our website and YouTube, so you'll be able to access it later. Now, Chaz, let's get started and introduce us to the Web of Sustainability.
Sounds good. Let's jump in. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're here for part two of Web of Sustainability. If you missed part one, it is recorded and on our website for you to watch at your leisure. I highly recommend that you go check it out, but it's not necessary for you to have attended that for you to gain really good insights for today, because we're talking about something with a little different focus today. So today we're going to focus on how to diversify the funding of your out of school time program so that it thrives well beyond a single grant cycle. Whether you lead a 21st Community Learning Center site or another community-based program, our lens is going to be the same. Long-term impact for young people, sustained by a healthy revenue mix and strong partnerships. So here's our flow for today. We're going to start with a quick framing of why diversification matters. Then we're going to experience a fast interactive activity called Funding Jenga. Then we'll walk through five different funding streams: grants, private donors, corporate partnerships, business models, and in-kind giving, with practical tools for each that you can use this month. And then we'll close with a 30-day action step so that you can leave with some momentum. During the presentation, please use the chat to freely, put down any questions that you might have, any insights. Feel free to share those too, because we're here to learn from each other. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll weave those questions and answers throughout the presentation where they sort of make sense. We are recording today, like Scarlett said, and so you'll have access to the recording and the slides afterwards. So today, I'd like to encourage you to imagine how these strategies fit your specific context, whether that's school-based, a community-based organization, or a rural or urban organization, right? These ideas translate directly into your program. It's just about the lens with which you're viewing your program. So let's jump in and we'll make your funding portfolio sturdier strand by strand. So again, I'm Chaz Sumners and I'm joined by Scarlett Odell, and we're really happy to dive into how you can really support your program beyond your grant cycle. So our objectives for today. Um, First, you're going to deepen your understanding of why diversification matters. It's not just a financial tactic. It's a strategic capability that protects youth outcomes during leadership changes, during grant sunsets, policy shifts, any other speed bumps that might come up. Second, you're going to explore five distinct funding streams. And for each one, I'll offer a little quick framing, a practical tool, and then a micro activity to move you from ideas to action. Think of yourself as wearing two hats today. You're wearing the portfolio manager hat, the one that you normally wear, where you're balancing risk and return across different revenue sources. But you're also going to wear a storyteller hat today. And as a storyteller, you're shaping messages that connect community resources to student impact. These two roles work together Diversification is what gives you your options, and clear storytelling unlocks those options for you. You're also going to leave with one 30-day next step. It might be starting a grant calendar. It might be scheduling 3 corporate discovery calls. Maybe it's drafting a one-page case for support. Regardless, I'll invite you to choose something that's small enough to finish, but meaningful enough to build momentum. Today, success is going to look like a mix of clarity and confidence. So if at any point anything feels murky, toss it in the chat. All right, so with that, let's align what we mean by sustainability in the OSD context. So for today's conversation, when we say sustainability, we're not just talking about keeping the lights on at your program. We're talking about maintaining student outcomes, attendance gains, academic support, social emotional growth, all of those beyond a single funding cycle. 4 strands reinforce each other when we talk about sustainability: diversified revenue, purposeful partnerships, disciplined compliance or stewardship, and program quality. You know, things that people want to fund. So, why does this matter? Because youth and families need predictable support. Staff need stability to plan, innovate, and stick around. And your partners need confidence that your program's going to be here next week, next semester, next year. So, a quick mental model here, right? Imagine a web, and each strand is grants, donors, corporate partnerships, earned income, in-kind contributions, and they all anchor your mission together. So if one strand starts to loosen, the other strands still hold. Sustainability is this system, right? It's not just a single strand. So as we go through today, ask yourself, which strand is strongest for us right now? Which one's underdeveloped? And how does our story, that is, the way that we describe the needs and results of our program, either attract or repel potential supporters? Keep those questions handy for our action planning later. So, up next, we're going to test some assumptions, right, with a quick game that makes risk visible. So, here's the reality: volatility is normal. Grant priorities evolve, administrations change, local budgets tighten. Maybe a local foundation sunsets or a long-term donor moves away. But none of this means that your work is any less worthy. It just means the environment is dynamic. Diversification's your hedge against these things. It spreads risk across sources with different timelines, different decision cycles, and different expectations. Public grants, for example, might offer scale and predictability, while private philanthropy can move faster for innovation. Corporate partners bring talent and goods. In-kind contributions stretch cash further. Earned revenue, when it's appropriate, and we'll talk about that, can fill strategic gaps. Consider cash flow. If 3 large grants all renew in June, what happens in March? Multiple streams with staggered cadences smooth the year and reduce emergency pivots. Diversification also builds influence. When more stakeholders are invested, more champions advocate for your program. Now, for our mixed audience, if you operate a 21st CCLC site, diversification still applies to you, right? You're not charging federal grants for fundraising, but you are cultivating partners. You're looking for those in-kind contributions and other non-federal supports for activities or needs that might exist outside of the grant structure. Now, if you're a non-21st CCLC program, you have significantly more latitude, but your goal is still going to be the same: steady, ethical, and equitable funding. So let's name the upside. Stability means you have fewer cliff edges, right? If a grant sunsets, your core operations don't immediately collapse. Flexibility, right? That means that you can test a new club, Maybe you pilot a new family engagement idea, or you might bridge a staffing gap without waiting for next year's request for proposal. And now resilience means that you can handle leadership changes. You can uh, deal with things if your district shifts. Maybe enrollment fluctuations might have previously thrown your program for a loop, but because you have a diversified portfolio, you can keep serving your students well, even with these speed bumps. There's also real power in a story. A diversified portfolio signals competence, right? Your program has multiple validators. They might be public agencies, they might be community donors, companies, volunteers. All of these people lend credibility to your program, and that attracts more support, including talent. The more people that are involved in your program, the more people want to get involved with your program. Staff morale improves when the future feels steady, when they're not worried that, oh, maybe the program won't exist after the grant. And boards engage more when they see multiple paths to success, when they know that if you have one speed bump, it's not just going to throw your whole program for a loop. So we want to measure diversification really simply when we're doing this. You want to count your active revenue resources, note their relative size, and then track that cadence. Is it monthly, quarterly, annually that you're getting these resources? Once you've done that, take a step back, look at what you've done, and see if one source exceeds, say, 40 to 50% of your total. That's a concentration risk that you need to watch. Over time, aim to grow smaller strands and reduce any over reliance on any single pillar without compromising your mission alignment. So, as we walk through today, ask yourself, right? What role could this play in our stability, our flexibility, our resilience, and telling our story? So, let's make this risk visible. Picture your program as a Jenga tower, and each block represents a funding source. Now, the wider the base, the more stable your tower. But if all of your weight rests on just a few large blocks, even a small shift can wobble the entire structure. So in the chat, I'd really love if you could share your top three funding sources in one line. For example, they might be 21st CCLC funding, city youth grants, or and the Smith Family Foundation. Now, if you're not comfortable naming specific funders, use general categories like federal grant, corporate gifts, earned income. Now, as the responses come in, I would encourage you all to check out the chat as well. Do you notice any clusters? Are we heavier on public grants? Are we light on corporate or in-kind? This snapshot helps you identify concentration risk. That is, places where one change could have an outsized impact on your program. In a minute, I'm going to invite you to imagine pulling one block out of your tower. And that one block is going to be your largest source in your mix of funding. You're going to think about what would wobble first. Is it staffing, transportation, stipends, maybe enrichment supplies? Don't overthink it. Just note the first thing that comes to mind. This exercise isn't about fear. It's just about thinking about design. Once we see the architecture of our tower, then we can strengthen it. All right, now take a breath and imagine pulling out your largest block. Now, in the chat, answer just in one phrase. Which services would be most at risk? Um, Examples might be late bus routes, maybe our STEM clubs. Maybe that Saturday programming that we have might fall by the wayside. Tutor stipends, perhaps, right? Now we're going to scan the chat again and look for patterns. Now, I see in the chat, and this is really common, right? Transportation and staffing are often the thing that surface first because they're high cost and they're essential. Some programs realize that enrichment supplies or family events might disappear quickly when that largest funding block goes, right? Because they might be the people that were really doing the heavy lifting to support those events. Now, let's flip the lens, right? What if your tower had more smaller blocks, right? How would that risk look? A $50,000 gap is significant, but five partners at $10,000 creates more paths to recovery than one partner that's giving you that $50,000. That's what we mean by the portfolio mindset. So, two quick reflection questions. What's one dependency that you could reduce over the next year? And what's one new strand, be it grant, donor, corporate, earned, or in kind, that you could cultivate to counterbalance what you've identified as your largest block? Jot those down for our action plan. So, next, we're going to explore each funding stream and we're going to highlight one practical move that you can make immediately. So, here's our roadmap: five streams that often power sustainable out of school time programs. Now, you don't need all five at equal strength, right? So don't think that you have to make sure they're all equal. And you're not going to grow all of them simultaneously. It's best to think of this in seasons. Pick two that you'll prioritize this quarter, one that maybe you'll start seeding for later, and then two that you'd like to maintain in the long term. Now, grants bring scale and structure, but they require really strong compliance and data capacity. So you need to make sure that you have the systems in place to be able to support that. When we talk about our private donors, they might be individuals or families. They grow through telling your story, through good stewardship, and through simple giving pathways, right? They want to know that you're doing a good job and having an impact in their community. They want to see that you're running your program well, and they want it to be very easy for them to give. They don't want there to be a bunch of hoops or, a bunch of bells and whistles they have to deal with. Our corporate partners, these are the ones that will combine cash with some sort of like in-kind resources or community service, organization. And sometimes they can provide volunteers that are aligned to our workforce and our community goals. Now, our business models are earned income when it's appropriate, can really diversify revenue, especially for our non-21st CCLC programs. We'll dig in to the differences and like what you need to keep in mind if you're a 21st CCLC program trying to implement a business model. But if you're not, within the confines of that grant, then it gives you a lot more latitude when it comes to supporting your program. Now, our in-kind giving stretches your budget and builds really sticky relationships. So as we explore each stream, I'm going to prompt a little micro activity and help you generate those ideas quickly. You want to capture anything that, sparks interest, even if it feels small. Often, sustainability is the accumulation of those small, repeatable moves that compound over time. So let's move on and start talking about grants, right? Let's dig in. When we talk about grants, they come in two broad flavors. We have our public grants, and those are state, federal, local grants. They tend to be cyclical, they are highly structured, and they are compliance heavy. And so they're great for scale when your program can actually meet the reporting and data expectations. If you can't, don't apply for these grants because they are going to come knocking asking for this data. And if you don't have it, it's going to be a real problem. Our private grants, they're typically from foundations or philanthropic organizations. These tend to be more flexible. They're faster to apply for, and they're focused on narrower thematic priorities, something like specifically STEM, literacy, college and career readiness. Think about these three questions to guide the fit for a grant, right? Think about alignment. So, does the request for proposals purpose cleanly match your program's design and its population? Think about capacity, right? Do you have the staffing, the data systems, the partnerships to execute and report on what you're promising? And then think about that cadence, right? Does the award that we're looking for, does that timing align with when you actually need resources? So operationally, the best thing to do here is to build a 12-month grant calendar with some deadlines, and some reporting dates, right? Um, you want to maintain a boilerplate when you do that too, right? Because even if you know the grant's coming up, you still have to like rush and get ready if you don't have all of your ducks in a row. Your boilerplate is a collection of documents that's going to include your need statement, a program model, some clearly defined and data-backed outcomes that have like an evidence base, and maybe your approach to equity. Um, you have all of those set up so that they're ready to plug into any grant application that you might run into. You might even have several different versions of them depending on the grant, the flavor and the feel of the grant that you're applying for. You're also going to line up memorandas of understanding and letters early because they're often the slowest part when it comes to, setting up a grant, and they're crucial for making sure that everybody knows what they're responsible for, particularly those folks who are going to be collecting your data. So, for our 21st CCLC folks, keep the supplement, not supplant lens in mind, right? You're going to ensure that your activities align with authorized uses. And you can do that, you can clear that with your SEA. They'll help you if anything's not clear. They will make sure that you're not crossing any lines that you shouldn't be crossing. Now, for our non-21st CCLC folks, that same discipline really should apply, right? You want to know what costs are allowable under each award. Um, it's also important to remember that grants are only one strand. They're powerful, they are large blocks of money, but they really work best when paired with partners, donors, and in-kind support. Now, let's take a moment to add a drag line, right? A stabilizing strand, if you will. And we'll do that by learning from each other's experience. Because most of us have probably applied for a grant and we've come up short in some way, shape, or form. So in the chat, I would love for you to name one grant you've applied for, or maybe just one that you've considered, and what the biggest challenge that you've faced when it comes to applying for that is. Is it data? Is it the timeline of the grant? Partner commitments, budgeting, narrative fit, etc. Just make sure you keep it at one line. As you type, I'll read some of the themes aloud. Some of the common barriers we run into are things like short request for proposal windows. Oh, I'm already seeing things come into the chat. Matching fund requirements. Yeah, that can be really tricky. That's true. I would also suggest unclear evaluation plans, right? If we don't know how we're going to evaluate our program, it's very difficult to prove what our outcomes are. Not a good mission fit. Yeah, absolutely. There are times when it's like that's a lot of money, but our mission, that grant's mission doesn't align with what our specific missions are, particularly when you've done a really good need statement and you're trying to specifically address the needs of your community. Now, I want you to take a minute and notice where your team repeatedly gets stuck, because that's going to be your cue for where you need to improve your grant application process. So I'm going to hit you with some quick coaching for each of these roadblocks. If data is your barrier, define 3 to 5 outcome metrics right now, and then align that collection method before your next request for proposal. Again, MOUs are great here because somebody needs to know that they are responsible for collecting this data. Otherwise, if we don't make somebody responsible, nobody's going to do it. That's what happens, right? Um, Now, if timelines are the thing that trip you up, keep a living grant calendar and pre-assemble that boilerplate that I was talking about so you're never starting from scratch. You're not scrambling to try to get things together. If fit is your issue, create a no-go checklist so that you can conserve your energy, right? You're only going to apply for those high probability opportunities. Now, if you're dealing with partners being slow to sign on, draft some memorandum of understanding shells, um, and have those ready for when you make the asks. Because when they see that you have that, it shows that you have really strong stewardship, right? That you are really paying attention to how you're putting together your program and you're being intentional about the people that you're bringing on, which makes larger partners more apt to actually engage with what you're doing. So I'd invite you to capture one improvement that you can make this month, and then we'll translate it into a concrete next step during our action planning. So now we've identified some big barriers, right? Let's turn those into systems so that we can be ready, so that, it's no longer a speed bump. It's something that we've used to improve the quality of our program and our grant process, our grant application process. So first, that 12-month grant calendar that I was talking about, right? In that, you're going to list some likely requests for proposals, due dates, things like data reporting milestones so that so you're not caught flat-footed. Um, the easiest way to do this is to work backwards to set internal draft deadlines, internal, deadlines for data pulls and sign off checkpoints so that we are getting ready internally before the actual grant timeline, says that we need to report. You're also going to want to assign owners so that nothing's orphaned. I've talked about that a lot, but it's something that's really important. The more people that are involved, the more likely it is where somebody's like, "Oh, I thought you were doing that. Oh, no, I thought you were doing that." And then all of a sudden we're pointing at each other, but none of us has the data or, whatever, right? Second, you're going to build that boilerplate library. That includes a really crisp needs statement with local data and current data, right? You want to make sure that you're always doing some data collection and you're keeping that data in your needs statement up to date because you want to very clearly show that you are addressing the current needs of your community. Your boilerplate's also going to contain a model description of your program. It's going to include some outcomes and some indicators, an equity and access statement that shows that, we are open and accepting everybody. Um, Maybe some standard bios of, at least your leadership and what are some current unit costs for you. It's a good idea to keep several different versions of this at different lengths and in different levels of detail. So, for example, like a 150 word one, a 300 word one, a 500 word one, so that you can snap them into different applications quickly. You'd be surprised how different the word counts in some of these application boxes are, and I speak from experience. Um, Third, you're going to keep an evidence and outcomes folder. This is going to have all of your evaluation summaries, all those amazing testimonials, the attendance and achievement data, so that your impact story is always right at hand. You're not like looking for, oh, where's that really awesome thing that, the Smith family said about us? Oh, no, no, no. I have it right here in this folder. Um, if GEPRA or similar measures matter in your context, you want to make sure that you're tracking them consistently too, right? That's something that's going to be wrapped in with your evidence and your outcomes, mostly for our 21st CCLC folks. Fourth, you want to do an allowability pre-check and budget your narrative and do your budget narrative really early, right? We want to clarify what costs fit under each funder's rules and how you're going to handle any match or program income considerations. And then lastly, I'm going to hit it again. You line up those MOUs and your letters of intent in advance. You're going to want to have templates. You're going to want to be able to, and the templates will let you be able to identify, like, okay, I know that I need you to sign here. I need you to, I need you to do this data collection. I need you to look at the finances. And it's a good idea to just keep a signing packet that's kind of like part of your boilerplate where you can, just pull it out and be like, oh, okay, well, you're going to be a community partner that helps with our family events. Well, here is that signing packet. So please sign here, here, initial here. Okay, great. This is awesome. Um, Partners really appreciate being asked early with very clear instructions because it shows you're being very intentional about bringing them on. These small systems, they dramatically increase your win rate, and more importantly, they reduce the stress involved with these grants. So now let's talk about how private donors can also help support our programming.
So private donors, that's a big thing, right? We want to understand why do they give? How do we get them pulled in, right? And individuals give, they tend to give for three big reasons. They believe in the cause, they trust the organization, and they see how their gift really makes a difference. So your job is to make those three buckets all unmistakable, right? So you want to lead with a story and build trust. Share a short or specific student or family story that really illustrates your mission. Pair it with indicators such as attendance gains, improved grades, increased SEL competencies, so that these donors can really see the outcomes, not just the activities. Other specificity is also great to offer that, right? So let's say $25 equips a student with a month of materials. $100 funds a robotics team fee, entry fee. $500 sponsors a semester of mentorships. So you want to be specific with the amounts, be specific with how they can really give and how you can make that giving tangible. And by doing that, you can help to reduce any friction that the funder might feel, right? Next, you want to build consistency, and you can do this through a simple cadence, right? A welcome note within 48 hours, a brief update 60 to 90 days later. Share two impact statements or stories per semester. Keep language inclusive and make sure they are focused on those strengths. Avoid jargon, right? We want to get right to the point. We want to take all the fluff out. Invite donors to step into a community open house or a student showcase. Offer them to volunteer and come to a volunteer night so they can really feel the impact. And remember your ambassadors. This can be board members, parent leaders, alumni, and staff. Be sure to equip them with a one-page case or two short talk tracks. So that could be 30 seconds to 2 minutes, right? Think of it like an elevator pitch. So they can confidently share the story with potential funders. So we're going to actually look at identifying and practicing looking at identifying some of those hooks and impacts that you could incorporate and take some tips from to build your own impact statement in your short, like little elevator pitch. So we're going to spot the hook, right? So take some time briefly to skim this little blurb for us. You can write one phrase in the chat labeled either hook or impact. So, what is the hook, right? It's something in the opening that really captures the reader's attention. It's supposed to be quick, brings them in, pulls them into the story. And the impact statement really quantifies or clearly describes the change a donor helps to create. So, as we're kind of like looking at some of the chat, I encourage you to kind of like browse through and notice what makes the hook effective, right? It's concrete, it's student-centered, it's vivid without being sensational. It invites the reader into a story that they want to continue. Strong impact statements tie gifts to those outcomes, whether that's grades, that is attendance, belonging, so that donors can really start to visualize that, right? So we can see here displayed our opening hook. When the school day ends, curiosity doesn't. At our community learning center, 120 middle schoolers build robots, write code, find mentors who believe in them. It's very quick, pulls you in, ties back really to that mission, and what you're really hoping that funders like latch on to, right? And then we look at our impact statement. You can see last year, 84% of participants improved a full letter grade in math or science, and 92% reported a stronger sense of belonging. So that right there, you're being specific. You're giving these potential funders like concrete data that ties into how how their giving can really affect. You're coming in with a clear ask. Your gift of $25 equips a student with a month of hands-on materials. $100 funds a team's entry fee. $500 supports a semester of mentorship. So you're giving them different options, right? You are breaking it down so they can see, okay, well, I might not be able to give 100 today, but I can give 25 and that will still help with a month of materials. So you're giving them the options and flexibility. And then you want to close with that thank you, really showing that you're thankful for their support. Whatever contribution they decide to give really helps the student to feel seen, capable, and ready to thrive in the program, right? So you want to always close with that gratitude and a quick reaffirmation of the purpose of this. So we're going to carry this forward as we refine donor messaging. So let's turn in this donor messaging on this next slide. Let's look at this and really turn it into how you can reuse this. How can you turn this into a repeatable donor message? So you want to start with a vivid story from a single student or a family. You want to tell it respectfully and focus on those strengths. Add one stat that reflects your broader impact, whether that's attendance improvement, homework completion, SEL growth. Then make a clear ask with 2 or 3 suggested amounts and an option to give monthly. Keep the path to giving simple, right? We don't want to scare them off with like too many steps. We want to make it clear and simple. So think of this as like a one-click online option. Checks sent in by mail, and employee match instructions. Give them details, give them clear-cut instructions on how they can give. So on your website, pair the donate button with a 100-word case or even a 60-second video featuring student voice or a parent testimonial. That way they can visually see as they're getting ready to donate and to give, they will see the impact that, current and past donors are already making. Stewardship is where this loyalty grows. So you want to make sure that you are thanking them fast, ideally within 48 hours with a personal tone, right? Within 60 to 90 days, send a short update showing progress on the outcome they funded. Over a year, aim for at least 2 stories or one brief impact snapshot and one invitation to really see the program in action. Finally, equip your ambassadors. Provide a 2-minute talk track and 3 social media captions that they can easily share. And consistency beats perfection. Ship small updates regularly and stay consistent with it, right? Next, let's look at some corporate partnerships, right? So we're looking at private donors. Let's jump into corporate partnerships and how to design those win-win relationships. Now, these corporate partnerships are oftentimes the most durable when they solve a company goal and a community need at the same time, right? So think in 4 different lanes. First, there's corporate social responsibility or corporate foundations, grants aligned to education or equity. Employee engagement, so team volunteer days, mentoring, skill-based projects. In-kind donations or in-kind resources. This could be devices, it could be software, marketing, or even legal services. And then lastly, we have sponsorships, and these can be tied to specific events or even signature programs. You want to lead with mutual value. For companies, value might include workforce pipeline development, employee pride and retention, brand reputation, and authenticity and authentic community investment. For you, value might be funding, expertise, supplies, and credibility. So start off by designing simple tiers. For example, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, and pair each of these tiers with clear engagement options. So sponsor a STEM showcase, adopt a club, or host a career day, and spell out how your partner is going to be recognized. Is that in a newsletter? Is it in social media? Is it through physical signage around your program or in the community? And while staying within your policies. So you want to make sure that you're aligning your recognition, how you're going to do that within your own program policies. Keep agreements lightweight. So an MOU with scope, timeline, and a point of contact person is often enough, right? You want to make sure that you're clear, you're giving a timeline, you're providing overall scope, and your person that is going to be that contact. Safety, privacy, and alignment also are key, and they truly matter with this. So you want to set boundaries for volunteer roles. If there are background checks that are required, you want to make sure that those are checked off the list. Those are handled as soon as possible. Photo permissions, you want to make sure all of that is squared away and all the signatures are gotten for that. And you want to choose partners whose values align with youth development and equity, and really partners whose values align with your own program. On the next slide, we're going to look at something that you can actually take back to your program. You can work on a little corporate partnership bingo to really spark some different ideas about what different businesses and different business types can really offer to your program. So on the screen, you'll see some common different business categories across the top, right? So we've got bank, we've got a grocery chain, tech company, hospital or a clinic, utility and energy, and a local university. And then right there across the top, you'll see the different um, kinds of support, right, that they can give. So, cash sponsorship, in kind goods, in kind services, employee volunteers, and space or facilities. So, we're going to call out a business type. And in the chat, I encourage you to type that business and check off what they could realistically provide in your community. So, for example, a bank might equal cash sponsorship. They could offer financial literacy workshops, employee volunteers, or even a meeting space. A grocery chain might mean snacks or gift cards, health and nutrition demos, or a space for a family event. So let's see if we can go through and fill out at least all of these right here and see if anybody gets bingo, right? So we talked about banks, we talked about the grocery chain. So let's look at utility and energy. What do we think? What are some of those services or goods that a utility or energy corporation and business could provide?
I think there could be some cool employee volunteers that you could get from
Hmm.
utility and energy companies. People that come in and tell us like actually how our energy grid works. Maybe like tell our youth about, sustainable resources when it comes to energy production. I think that could be
Hmm.
really cool.
So some of those employee volunteers, or even if they want to do a demo or a service, I think they could come in if you're talking about, especially, I think if we're talking about a STEM program, right?
Yeah.
That energy component, they could even come in and do a complete demo, tying into, your program's goals, right? Let's look at a tech company. What could a tech company do? I'm seeing, okay, so cash, maybe they could give some cash sponsorships.
Hmm.
Tech companies tend to be very high up, right? So maybe they do have some income that they could provide, right? Some cash sponsorships, even in-kind goods. Think
Yeah.
of laptops, computers, um, keyboards, anything technical that you might need. They might have some and they could help donate like a certain amount of Chromebooks for your program.
Yeah.
Good. Hospital or a clinic? What do we think about that one?
I
Okay, I'm
think.
seeing some employee volunteers. We could do that.
Hmm.
Yes, if you're having, like, if you're hosting something, having an event, maybe you could, the hospital or the clinic could donate, or, volunteer some of their time, especially if it's, let's say you're having a big, like, program field day and you need to have some nurses, right? You need to have some people that, are there in case anything happens, right? So some of those employee volunteers, absolutely. Even
Well,
in-kind services, I would
yeah,
say
like a
too,
first aid
if
class could be cool.
first aid, absolutely. I see some people in the chat, first aid, CPR training, absolutely. Because a lot of those times, you would have nurses and staff from a hospital or clinic that are CPR certified and they help do training. So we all know that that comes around every 2 years and you got to keep up on it and keep getting retrained.
Oh, a family engagement event about nutrition. That's a really good idea. Or health. Yeah, those are both really great ideas in the
Absolutely.
chat.
Perfect. And then, okay, I think we're at our last one. And then local university. So, what could a local university provide? Oh, I'm seeing space. Yes. Space or facilities. Yes. They have a lot of different spaces where if you're needing to host a large event or even a large meeting, a program meeting with staff or family, that would be a really great place. And local universities or even local community colleges really want to be involved with the community and partner with others within the community. So that is perfect. Anything else that we're seeing?
Oh, tutors. Yep, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the chat. I like that idea. There are a lot of university students that are willing to come in and volunteer some hours, to come help out with, our youth, help with homework. Um, Also, if your, local university has a robust teaching college, maybe you have some of these teachers who, like, they just want more student-facing time. So they might be willing to come in and lead a group for you, some such thing.
Perfect. All right. Thank you everyone for sharing. I think we went through that. I think we covered a lot of those and you guys were great. We given ideas. Hopefully one of you did get a bingo in there. But keep these in mind as you're looking for different corporate partnerships. Take like a snapshot of this and keep that in mind of how you can look at these different businesses and really what can they provide because as we've seen, there's a lot of different ways that they can help provide and support you and your program. So let's take a look at how to craft a simple pitch and recognition plan that makes it easier for those companies and businesses to say yes. So great partnerships really start with a clear, simple offer. Open with outcome, open with the outcome you create for youth. Then present 2 or 3 ways a company can help. Ideally, you want to provide a cash option, that the way they can give a cash option, an in-kind or a skills option, and a volunteer or engagement option. So, for an example, together we'll expand after school STEM for 120 middle schoolers. Choose one. Option A, $5,000 to underwrite a robotics showcase. Option B, donate 10 refurbished laptops plus 6 mentor hours. Or option C, host a career exploration night. Again, we're going to utilize those tiers that we talked about before. So create those tiers that match different budgets. $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. Each with a brief list of benefits. Recognition, engagement, Storytelling moments. Recognition should be tasteful and aligned with your policies. So, a newsletter thanks, social media posts, physical signage at events. And you want to do this without overpromising. Make the process easy, right? A one-page overview plus a two-page MOU that states the scope, the timeline, points of contact, and any guardrails that there might be, such as background checks for volunteers, photo permissions that have to be signed off on, no direct student marketing, etc. Have a simple intake form for skills-based projects so you can match needs. So, a marketing plan, IT setup, volunteer management system. Your first meeting is discovery. What outcomes does the company care about? Is it workforce pipeline? Is it employee engagement? Is it brand reputation? What resources can they readily provide? Cash, product, space, expertise, volunteers, and close with a next step and a date. Finally, prepare your internal readiness. A quick orientation for corporate volunteers, sample schedules, talking points, and a backup plan if staff are out. The easier you make it to say yes and deliver a smooth experience for these businesses and corporate sponsorships and corporations, right? The more likely the partnership is going to repeat, and the more likely it's going to grow and flourish. So, I'm going to pass it over to Chaz, and we're going to continue to take a look at some of these business models and how you can really look at these business models. How can you align it with your program and continue with building sustainable relationships?
So our corporate partners are awesome, right? But what happens if we become our own little business, right? Earned income can be a really powerful strand when it aligns with your mission and equity, right? Some common models that you see in out-of-school time programs are fee for service enrichment, right? So you might run something that's like a really cool club, and maybe other members of the community want to engage with that club. Well, you can have a fee for people to then engage with this awesome high interest club that you're doing. Professional development workshops, right? For schools or CBO or community-based organizations. So if you have people that have particular skills and those are trainable skills, you can hold workshops where you do training, and like local teachers or whatever can get really good hours, right? And that's also a great way to build that partnership with our school day partners. Facility rental for events. If you hold your program at a place where it might be like some like large hall or what have you, a larger event space, you can then rent that space out when you're not using it, and you can make a significant amount of income just from renting it out for bigger events for your community. It also provides a service for the community, right? Where are we going to have the potluck? Oh, well, we can have it where we have the out of school time program. That's great. Let's do that. Um, and small social enterprises, right? So you have things like student-made products, concession stands at showcases. What I really love is I've seen programs that they'll have a PBL and they'll do their project-based learning initiative, and it might be something like creating a community garden, and then they sell the produce from that community garden, and those proceeds go back into the program to help support more initiatives. Start with problems that you already solve and audiences that already trust you, and build from there when it comes to like, building the business base for your model. Now, a quick aside for our 21st Community Learning Center funded folks. Fees, if they're allowed by your state or local policy, are typically treated as program income, and they must not create barriers to participation. So that means fees can't be charged to the federal award, and participation can't be denied due to the inability to pay. So if you were a 21st CCLC program that's looking to institute a business model, I strongly encourage you to work very closely with your SEA to seek those required approvals to really document your approach. So, make sure that it's very clearly defined that you have maybe a sliding scale or scholarships to support our youth that might not be able to afford the fee. And then you want to ensure that your funds are used for allowable purposes within the period of performance. It's really important when you're tracking that program income to track it separately from whatever income you're bringing in from the business model too. Now, for our non-21st CCLC folks, you have a lot more flexibility. Uh, but you're always still going to want to keep equity at the center of what you're doing. And you can do that with scholarships, really transparent policies, and communication in family home languages. A really useful thing to do when you're instituting a business model is to run a true cost analysis. So that measures things like staff time, fringe costs, supplies, the insurance cost, admin time, and any overhead. Price to cover costs and a reasonable margin for reinvestment without drifting from the mission. So aligning what those costs are is tricky, but it's easier to do once you have a full true cost analysis. So you know what the services you're providing are actually worth, and you know, more importantly, what your community can afford. When you're doing these, start by piloting small. That way that you can learn fast and you can decide whether you're going to scale something or you're going to sunset it. Don't just jump completely in head first and do an enormous program. Do a small pilot program so that you know what works. Some really key risks to avoid. Avoid over reliance on just a couple paying families, right? It's great if you have some people that are really dedicated and they're constantly coming and paying, month after month, but you're still going to want to work to expand that base. Maybe those families can, just through word of mouth, tell the story of the good work that you're doing and bring some more people in. Um, you also want to make sure that you're avoiding any mission drift. It's very easy when we're chasing dollars to forget about what our mission is, what our North Star is. So it's really important to keep that in mind as we're pursuing business ventures. The other thing you want to think about is really avoid the hidden staff burnout because any business model that you're talking about means adding more work for your staff, right? And we all know, because we're all program people, we're all pretty pressed already. So when you add another responsibility onto somebody, it's very easy to burn them out. So the way that we guard against this is we make sure that we have very clear goals to avoid mission drift. We make sure we have time boxed pilots, right? So that we're not just piloting this thing forever. We have a certain period of time that we know that we're going to pilot this, model, and then we'll revisit and we'll see what happens. Um, and also, you want to make sure you're collecting very deep and impactful data around attendance, satisfaction, and then, of course, the net revenue, right? Your bottom line. So let's talk about some guardrails. These are the things that keep your earned income healthy. So first, we're piloting, like I said, quickly, but also intentionally. And that means defining 6, maybe 12-week test window with a very clear, maybe one sentence test goal. Our target audience, what our prices are, and what is going to be our criteria for success. Is it going to be increased enrollment? Is it going to be very high, a certain satisfaction number? Is it going to be a certain amount of net revenue that we're able to collect in that pilot period? Whatever it is, decide in advance what would trigger you to scale the program, maybe pause it, or to just stop it entirely. We want to have those hard metrics so that we're not in the middle of it and going, oh, well, this is kind of working. So, like, maybe we'll try it for a little more. No, we started it already, knowing what our metrics are. Second, you're going to want to calculate those unit costs. So, the per hour, per student costs, including the indirect costs. Easiest way to just to build a simple cost allocation plan. That way, staff time, supplies, they're coded correctly. We're not commingling restricted funds, particularly if you're 21st CCLC funded. You want to keep that program income tracked separately and used for allowable purposes. Again, if you're unclear on anything, check with your SEA. Third, ensure access. So that means having a sliding scale. That means having a scholarship policy. That means maybe having just fee waivers if it's needed, right? Like maybe you have tiers of things. We have a sliding scale. If you still can't afford that, maybe you're in our scholarship pool. If you don't make a scholarship pool, well, then maybe we'll talk about having the instituting a fee waiver for you. We just want to make sure that we're not blocking access to our program and gating it behind dollars. It's also important that communication with your families that you want to make sure that you're not turning away anybody. Um, Not just for inability to pay, but maybe just access in general. Maybe the kids can't get there, maybe something like, maybe something to that nature. That way, in ways like that, we can support with, things like transit vouchers, things like that. And maybe we can use some of that money that we're making from our business model to do that. And that might also increase our capacity. You want to also make sure that you are protecting your staff capacity, right? So that means having MOUs again, right? Defining who leads, defining who backfills, defining what gets deprioritized during the pilot. Because it's not like there's somebody that has extra bandwidth in your program. People who are instituting these business models are already working at full capacity doing other things in your program. So things have to get deprioritized. Otherwise, it's just unrealistic to think that we're going to be able to add another responsibility onto these people. It's just about avoiding overextending your frontline staff, particularly during high intensity weeks. It might be one of the things where, like, oh, yeah, it feels like it works now if we keep running everything at full steam. But then what happens in, 2 weeks before winter break when we're all pressed, drained, and burned out, right? And it's high intensity because there are a bunch of different activities going on. Yeah, you have to think about that, right? We also want to plan risk management. These are things like any insurance considerations, um, safety protocols, because even though might have robust safety protocols for our program, business models often mean, more hours, larger open access to our program, and so we need very robust safety protocols, and that includes volunteer screening, and that includes also data privacy, right? We need to make sure everybody's information is guarded and protected. When it comes to our corporate partners or sponsors, we want to make sure we're clarifying our boundaries, right? So nobody is directly marketing to our students. Our recognition stays within policy, right? We're not doing some other huge thing to recognize this company or this group that's helping out. You also want to collect lightweight data, some enrollment numbers, attendance numbers, revenue, expenses, and maybe just like a quick two-question satisfaction check. At the end of the pilot, we review all of this and we decide, are we going to iterate or are we going to exit, right? Guardrails make earned income a resilient strand and not something that is like a distraction and a burnout for your staff. So now let's talk about some in-kind giving and what that means.
So, in-kind giving really helps to stretch your cash and build those sticky relationships. It includes goods, so that could be snacks, uniforms, STEM kits, Chromebooks, services, legal review, marketing design, translation services, or IT setup. Third, there is expertise. So that includes mentors, tutors, or even guest speakers. And then lastly, there is space or transportation. So this could be meeting rooms, buses, or event venues. Start by mapping program needs to these in-kind categories. For example, if transportation is really a pinch point for your program, a local transit agency might provide passes or help with route planning support. If language access is a gap, a local university, a community college, or even a hospital could help to contribute with this with translation or even interpretation hours. If your tech is aging, a company might donate refurbished devices with IT imaging support. So two key practices are first, right sizing the ask. Be specific about the quantities, the specific models, and the timing. And secondly, valuation and acknowledgement. document a fair market value, issue acknowledgement letters, and track the usage of these in-kind donations. This transparency really helps the donors really see where their products are going, how they're being used, and it also helps later on with any audits that might happen. Volunteer expertise needs structure. Provide simple role descriptions, guardrails, like some of the things we just talked about, and orientation. Align schedules with student routines and ensure background checks are completed where they're required. And great volunteer experiences become pipelines to those cash sponsorships. So let's take a look at a little wish list brainstorm, right? Time to really translate these needs into those asks. So in the chat, you can list three in-kind items or services you could realistically request tomorrow. Use this format, so item or service, plus the quantity of hours, plus who might provide it, and what its intended outcome and impact is. So an example, you're asking for headphones. You need about 20 of them. You are asking from a local credit union, and its intended impact is going to be for quiet, independent reading. Or let's say you need help with Spanish interpretation. That's the service you need. You need about 15 hours. You're asking a university language department, and these are going to be used, these services are going to be used for family conferences. So let's look for some of these asks, right? Are they low friction, so easy for a donor to provide? Are they high impact, directly improves student experience? And are they visible, right? Easy to steward with a photo or even a story. So let's see, what do we have coming in? I do see a lot of them tying into some of those like translation services because a lot of you might have work in a lot of communities where there is maybe not like one, but like two or three or four different, language barriers that you might need to address. So I think, right, a lot of that could be reaching out, thinking about reaching out to um, a local university to help with some of those services.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gets really tricky. There are some communities where I remember talking to somebody that was running a program in Alaska, and they were saying there were like 30 spoken languages in their
Mm,
program. So they're constantly tapping, local universities and then even, hospitals, because you'd think like, think maybe like hospitals, why would they need translation services? But you'd be surprised how many people come in needing medical services that aren't like English is not their first language. So you need a number of people who can help, with those translation services. Yeah. Yeah.
hmm
Definitely a growing need.
Absolutely. What else are we seeing? Hold on.
Mm.
Okay.
Tech from
Yeah.
local companies. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely what I think with tech with, right, like it's always evolving. So, you
Exactly.
get
Right.
the newest thing and then, it's just the next year, like something new's coming out. So we're
Hmm.
always growing with that and it's always a need that we have, right? Absolutely. Thank you. So can kind of keep this in mind. Start building some of like your own wish list, right? What are those, in-kind items or services you could request? And think about who, what, businesses, or who might be able to provide that within your community. Start kind of like brainstorming and getting some of these together. A bonus tip too, you could bundle small asks into like a classroom starter kit or a STEM cart. So companies can really see a tidy package with a clear price value. So for services, propose a time box sprint. So an example, you could design a two-page flyer, three social posts in 2 weeks, really putting things together. So that's kind of like an idea that you could do as you're kind of putting this brainstorm, kind of going through, putting this wish list together, think of ways where you can kind of bundle some of these items or services that you're requesting. So let's look at how to ask, right? How to ask and track. Your outreach can be as simple as a two-line pitch, right? We help 120 middle schoolers access after-school STEM. Could your company donate 20 headphones and 10 refurbished laptops to launch our new robotics club this spring? You could add a one little brief sentence on the impact and a bullet for logistics. So, where can they drop them off, or is there a pickup time? Be specific, right? Tying back into what we've said before, quantities, models, quality standards, timing, offer choices. So any of the following could help. Option A, you could donate 20 headphones. You could donate 10 laptops, specifically Chromebooks, like we're looking for those. Or even C, you could help us by supporting and offering 3 months of IT imaging support. So give them options where they can choose. And provide a contact and a simple reply path. Easy way for them to get in contact with the point person and how they can, donate these services. Once received, you want to document date, donor, description, fair market value, and program use. Use a basic gift in kind form you can find a ton of different templates you could use and store acknowledgments. Send a thank you. You can send a thank you with a photo or even a short quote from students, of course, with their permissions, highlighting how this is really helping them in the program. Put donors on a light stewardship cadence, one impact note per semester. So they really feel connected, right? They feel like they are connected to this program and they will consider renewing or even converting to cash support later down the road. Track conversations. After two positive in-kind experiences, invite a small cash sponsorship for a specific event or even a club. Many partnerships start in kind and they grow into broader support when that experience is smooth and it's meaningful. So, Chaz, can you take us and bring us through how do we really put all of this into action? How do we plan it out? And how do we go from there?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and lock in that momentum, right? We've thrown a lot of things at you, and sometimes it's really hard to think about how all those moving pieces fit together when that happens. So let's take a look at some things that we can do right now. On the notes that you've been keeping, or maybe just write in the chat using this template here, identify three things for me. One, strength, right? So one funding source you're already strong in. One area of growth, so one funding source that you intend to strengthen next. And then give me one concrete action that you're going to complete within the next 30 days or so, right? So some examples you might put in your action planner are, I know that our strength is, the foundations with whom we have partnerships, like, the charitable foundations. But what I like to grow is our corporate partnerships. So in the next 30 days, I'm going to schedule 3 discovery calls, maybe with local banks or grocery chains, something of that nature. Perhaps you're strong in in-kind giving, but what you'd really like is to secure a grant that gives you a larger block of funding, right? That's where you want to grow. So in our next 30 days, we're going to build a 12-month grant calendar with 6 likely opportunities that we can pursue. Whatever you choose, make sure that it's a SMART goal. And by SMART, we mean specific, so we know exactly what we're talking about, measurable, so it's something that we can document data and track, achievable, so something that's not completely pie in the sky and like unreasonable, relevant to what we're doing, and then, of course, time bound, right? We need to make sure that there is an end date where we can like stop, take a moment, and assess when you're doing these, like, particularly the 30-day action steps, assign an owner and a target date for it so that it's not orphaned. It's something that has somebody who like feels like they're responsible for it. So, um, I'll pause for 30 seconds to let you guys jot that down. Um, I would encourage you to remember that small, finished steps beat big, unfinished plans. What I always used to like to say to my students was any movement in the correct direction, no matter how small, is progression, right? And so that's what we're doing. Even if it's a little step we're taking, as long as we're taking it in the correct direction, we're making progress towards sustainability. So here are a few solid bite-sized actions to consider depending on, what your goals are. You could perhaps schedule 3 meetings with potential corporate partners. And those corporate partners could be all types of people. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I scheduled a, meeting with Google, right? It could be the local Kroger. It could be, the green grocer in your town. It could be, somebody who does like local screen printing, something of that nature. Um, so don't just think that you have to just shoot for the moon. Um, you can also draft one-page cases for support. And so these are sort of one-page things that tell our story, tell the impact that we're having for our community, and how partners could help. And then you want to sort of turn that into a template so that it can be adaptable to different grants and donors who have different interests. You're also going to want to build a grant calendar with like 6 opportunities. They you want to make sure that they're aligning with your mission. You're not just like grabbing any grant that looks like it's out there, but take some time and then align those to a calendar and then start working backwards from those application dates to have, data reporting, data collection dates so that we're doing all of that work ahead of time and we're not scrambling when that RFP comes out. Another great thing to do is to create an in-kind wish list and then start an outreach to 5 orgs. It's a lot easier to get in-kind contributions when you're very clearly asking for something specific, as opposed to just being like, oh, or is there anything that you can provide us? No, you go there with a very specific list of things that you'd like, and then even if they can't provide anything that's on that list, it gives them a very clear idea of the type of thing you're looking for. So let's go just some action steps for each one of our strands, just so what we leave you with something concrete and actionable that you can do tomorrow. For our corporate partners, identify 5 companies. Send 2 discovery emails to those companies. Like pick 2 of those companies, send discovery emails. And then prepare a one-page offer that has 3 different tiers of contributions, depending on how much they want to engage. For our grants, draft that boilerplate that I was talking about, right? All the need statements, the outcomes, all the data, so that you can plug it into whatever RFP. Add 3 RFPs to your grant calendar and make sure that you start instituting MOUs for those grants now, just so that you have them as templates. For our private donors, finalize just like 100-word case and set up a monthly giving option that has a very clear and streamlined method of giving. Maybe you schedule one story post per month that just, tells your story in your social media to your private donors, letting them know what the impact of their donations are having is. For in kind, again, not only do you want to create a wish list, I suggest posting that wish list. Maybe like, you could have it at your site, but if you have an active social media for your program, that's another great place to put that wish list. That way, that can get shared with people that might not even be not directly involved in your program, but are just interested in giving to the local community. For our earned income, this is where you're gonna look at maybe like a 6-week pilot and run it with your true cross numbers, your true cost numbers, and then you at the end of that pilot, you take a look, you decide whether you're going to sustain it, whether you're going to stop it, whether it needs to get modified. Um, Regardless of what you choose, I would I would definitely caution you to, if you're working across multiple sites, designate a lead at each site for these things that you're collecting or like sort of anything you're instituting. Because we know, especially as we progress through the year, how siloed off we can be in our like individual program sites. And so it's good to have somebody at each site that is very tapped in to what our overall goal is, regardless of which strand we're pursuing. So today's big idea was the sustainability as a web, right? Not just the single strand. So by diversifying across grants, donors, corporate partners, earned income, and in-kind giving, and also by grounding your choices in compliance and equity, you build stability, flexibility, resilience for your students and your staff. So, during our time together, you've generated some practical actions. You've refined your donor message. You've mapped some corporate assets, and you've thought about ways you can pressure test some earned income ideas, and you even built out a in-kind wish list. So, your 30-day step is the bridge from learning to impact. So, please write down where you'll see, that impact tomorrow morning. What actions you're going to start implementing tomorrow, the next time you look your program folks in the face. To assist in these efforts, we're really excited to share a little sneak peek of part one of our new sustainability toolkit. This toolkit is a free resource that's filled. And when I say filled, I'm talking about it's like 100+ pages
Mhm.
of really detailed information about every aspect of sustainability, including templates for all the things we've discussed here, tools that you can use to support your work, and a lot of really good framing, to make sure that we're all staying aligned in the mission of sustainability. I really encourage you to take a look at it. And we can't wait to share the completed version of it with you very, very soon. So,
Please be sure to scan that QR code,
oh,
and you can get all of that.
also true, yes. That QR code up top
Yeah.
there is what leads to that thing. Yes, I did leave that
So
out. Yes,
it'll take you to a QR code. The QR code will take you to a form that you can fill out. It will have a link for the sneak peek, but if you would like to get the full version when it is completed, be sure to fill out that complete Google form. That way, when we do have it completed, it will get sent right to your email.
absolutely. And last but not least, we encourage you to join us at BSH in 2026, March 1st through the 4th in sunny Orlando, Florida. Go ahead and scan that QR code, and that'll get you hooked up with tickets and information about the hotel and all of that good stuff. Please join us. I like to say it's like a just fun 3-day educational party where, you learn a bunch of stuff, but it's refreshing and you have a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we're gonna go ahead and close out.
Thanks everyone for being here. We will hopefully see you at Beyond School Hours Conference in Orlando in March. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.